speed, John Glenn.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground.
New possibilities are opening up for scientific cooperation between countries.
2, 1, 0, 0. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
Discovery, go and throttle up.
Discovery, Roger. Go for deploy.
Thanks to you and to everybody in the shuttle program. The crew is go for launch.
Roger. Nice to be in orbit.
We have followed in their footsteps to get us where we are today.
Good afternoon. It's Saturday, May 1st, here at SpaceX's headquarters in Hawthorne, California. We are coming to you live as we await for Dragon resilient spacecraft to depart from the International Space Station and make its way back to planet Earth. We do expect Dragon Resilience to push away from the space station at about 5:35 p.m. Pacific time with our Crew-1 astronauts, 3 from NASA, Mike Hopkins, Victor Glover, Shannon Walker, and from Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronauts Soichi Noguchi. My name is Andy Tran. I'm a production supervisor here at SpaceX. I'm very excited to be bringing you live coverage of the Crew Dragon completing its second trip to the space station with people on board as NASA's first official long-duration mission of our commercial crew program. Joining me today is NASA's Public Affairs Officer, Leah Cheshire. Leah, how are you doing today?
Hey, Andy. I'm doing awesome because you can't be anything else than that whenever you're excited about bringing some people home from space. So once Dragon departs station, the crew's flight home is expected to last roughly 6.5 hours and include 4 departure burns that move Dragon away from station and 1 final deorbit burn. Dragon is targeted to splash down off the coast of Panama City, Florida, in the Gulf of Mexico at 11:56 p.m. Pacific or 6:56 GMT, followed by the crew getting picked up at sea by one of SpaceX's recovery vessels.
Now, the crew have been up there for quite a while. The mission began on November 15th of last year.
Just a heads up, we saw something small, silver, float towards the airlock, bottom of the airlock behind you, from Soichi's suit. Towards the deck.
So what we heard was those beeps are Quindar tones, and that is the core or the crew operations resource engineer communicating to the astronauts.
So that was the Capcom, the capsule communicator in Houston, still communicating with the astronauts aboard the International Space Station, as well as we get Crew-1 suited up and back into Crew Dragon.
And we'll try to pause to make sure that everyone can hear those communications. But
and Houston, copy Joe last. Which direction was it flying? Oh, I found it. Thank you.
Glad to be of help.
So this mission began last November on the 15th.
On the big loop.
SpaceX here.
And I think the control panel lighting batteries that are installed now are the newest of the 2 of the 4. But I just wanted to confirm, do you want us to replace the batteries or do you want us to leave the ones that are currently installed?
Standby 1.
So as you can hear, there are a lot of checks underway right now between teams here on the ground in Mission Control Hawthorne and in Mission Control Houston, with both the crew on the International Space Station that will remain once Crew-1 departs today, and the Crew-1 astronauts themselves. So it's just those final checks that have to happen as we're getting ready for hatch closure coming up here shortly.
And on screen, that is a view from the International Space Station. That is Soichi Noguchi suiting up.
He and Shannon Walker will go ahead and suit up outside, and that's Aki Hoshide next to him. That's the new space station commander. Command was transferred over to him from Shannon Walker, who's also departing today. And Walker will have probably already suited up at this point. They will ingress the vehicle already in their suits, and Mike Hopkins and Victor Glover will suit up after.
SpaceX on Big Loop 4, answer.
And SpaceX, go ahead on the big loop, and you guys are coming in a little bit scratchy.
Copy. Yes, we concur. You swapped those for port reload, and those ones that you have in there are good to go. You can skip that step in 2.103.
Okay, copy. We'll leave as is. Thank you.
So as we wait, we can see a lot of astronauts continuing to help Soichi. It looks like they're taking photos. You'll notice a lot of picture taking throughout this process. A lot of those are sent to ground to help inspect seals or potential FOD that may be in hatches, but it looks like he is going up into the zenith port. And in that space where another astronaut is going right now, that is where the Dragon capsule that will depart today is currently parked. And that is Soichi going through the APAS hatch and the vestibule into Dragon.
We've got some cargo stowage right there as well. Love getting those final photos with your crew members in space. The next time they'll all see each other is when those crew members return to Earth as well. So I think it could probably be kind of hard to leave your friends after spending almost 6 months on board with them. And there's NASA astronaut Shane Kimbrough, who just arrived a week ago on the Crew-2 mission. He's helping them complete their checks ahead of hatch closure and undocking today.
And also part of the Crew-2 astronaut, that is Thomas Pesquet with his hand on the blue rail. He's also going in to see if he can help as well.
Pesquet also arrived a week ago, and he was the first European Space Agency astronaut to fly on board Crew Dragon. In this view from the inside of the International Space Station, the Kibo module, the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency module, and you can see a lot of those stickers there tell us a little bit about the history of who's been on board. You've got some crew member signatures and sentiments. And to learn a little bit more about the International Space Station side of things and how those operations are going in preparation for undock, let's talk with our colleague Brandy Dean in Houston. Brandy.
Thanks, Leah and Andy. And we are here inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room watching just as you guys are there in California. We're currently awaiting the astronauts, as you said, Mike Hopkins, Victor Glover, Shannon Walker, and Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Soichi Noguchi to ingress and board Dragon for their return flight home. As you are seeing, ingress is definitely already underway. It'll wrap up once Mike Hopkins and Victor Glover board in just a few minutes. Ingress, it actually involves them getting into their spacesuit inside. We've seen Shannon Walker and Soichi Noguchi already in their spacesuit, but Victor and Mike will follow up by putting theirs on once they do board. Let's take a look at some of the upcoming milestones, not only for today's departure, but also splashdown. First up, of course, at 3:20 p.m. Pacific time or 5:20 Central, we will be watching for hatch closure. Once all Dragon crew members are inside their vehicle in just a few minutes from now, they'll be able to close the hatches between them and the International Space Station. As I said, Mike and Victor will be donning their spacesuits once they are inside the Dragon. And as you saw there on the screen, those aren't the big white spacesuits you might remember from the spacewalks, but the SpaceX spacesuits the crew will wear during all of the dynamic phases of flight to protect them in case of an emergency. There will also be a series of leak checks on the spacecraft that will occur before the crew makes their way into their seats to strap in for undocking. At 3:25 p.m. Pacific or 5:25 Central, we'll have the APAS hatch closure. Once Dragon's hatch is closed, Shane Kimbrough, one of the space station crew members staying behind, will fix a docking target to the outside of the APAS hatch and then close it, creating a space between Dragon and the station known as the vestibule. He'll then make his way out of the pressurized mating adapter between the two vehicles and close the forward hatch on node 2 of the space station.
SpaceX, this is Resilience.
At 4:10.
Dragon cabin configuration for departure is complete, 2.10. However, Ike is still working on the polar lockers.
Copy. Thanks for the status.
Dragon Commander Mike Hopkins there reporting that they are making their way through the different tasks and check marks that they need before they are able to close the hatch. Continuing through the activities coming up at 4:10 p.m. Pacific or 6:10 Central, we'll have vestibule depressurization. Once all the hatches are closed, a ground command will be sent to open valves on Dragon and begin depressurizing the vestibule, essentially venting the air inside and bringing it down close to vacuum. They'll pause at about 5 pounds per square inch for a few minutes to allow temperatures inside the vestibule to stabilize before they finish that depressurization. And then at 5:20 p.m. Central, 7:20 p.m. Pacific, 7:20 Central, we'll listen for the go, no-go call for undocking. Teams here in Mission Control Houston and in MCCX and Hawthorne will do a joint call for undocking. Finally, at 5:35 p.m. Pacific, 7:35 Central, that will be the actual separation. An undocking command will be sent, followed by a few minutes for the umbilical that connects the power and data between the two spacecraft to detach, and for 12 hooks holding the Dragon in place to retract. Then 2 quick firings of the Dragon's thrusters will initiate separation and undocking will be complete. NASA astronaut Shane Kimbrough is going to watch the undocking and departure from the cupola, but the prime departure monitoring role falls on the crew. Mission Control Houston will back them up from the ground.
And SpaceX, this is
As you've heard several times, Dragon's flight is intended to be autonomous.
3.1 Dragon departure prep.
And Resilience SpaceX, assuming that means bolt torquing is complete. You are go to complete LIO configuration, IMV teardown, and hatch closure per procedure 2.103. You can perform a LIO changeout to cartridge 2, and when complete, then execute your instructions in your hatch closed event details, followed by suit donning per procedure 4.010. How copy?
Okay, so we have a go. Ike is complete with the polar torquing, 2.103. LiO cartridge is 2, and once complete with all of that, we're going to close the hatch and get into the event details.
Good readback.
Mike Hopkins again, commander of the Dragon, talking with the team on the ground in Mission Control X in Hawthorne about the steps that are getting the Dragon ready for its departure today, and specifically the lithium hydroxide cartridge reconfiguration. They'll also be working on some teardown of ducts between the two vehicles, the Dragon and the International Space Station, all leading up to that hatch closure that we're watching for. Here on the space station side of the activities, we're looking good. Solar arrays are locked in place and we have good communication links. Attitude is going to remain on the United States thruster control until the time of undocking, when we'll switch to use control moment gyroscopes only. We're tracking no issues for an on-time departure. And as we get ready for that final ingress, I'll throw it back to Leah and Andy in Hawthorne.
Thanks so much, Brandy. And we heard several calls there, and one being that they were go for hatch closure. You can see NASA astronaut Shane Kimbrough continuing to do some work around the hatches and in that vestibule area. And we should probably mention that just before we came on air today, we heard that the weather is go in the most recent weather briefing that comes about 2.5 hours prior to undocking. So everything continues to move on the timeline here. And then there in the center of your screen, you've also got NASA astronaut Megan MacArthur. She arrived with the crew members a week ago on Crew-2. Let's learn a little bit more about our astronauts that are departing today. We've got Crew Dragon Commander Mike Hopkins, who was born in Lebanon, Missouri, but grew up outside Richland, Missouri. He was selected as an astronaut by NASA in 2009. He's a colonel in the United States Air Force and holds degrees in aerospace engineering. Hopkins flew on the Russian Soyuz as a member of the Expedition 3738 crew, logging 166 days in space. He performed 2 spacewalks totaling almost 13 hours to change out a degraded pump module on the space station. And his military experience includes testing C-17 and C-130 aircraft. During this mission, he also completed 2 more spacewalks, bringing his total to 4.
Next up is pilot Victor Glover. He's a native of Pomona, California. He was selected as an astronaut by NASA in 2013. Glover is a commander in the United States Navy, holds degrees in general engineering, flight test engineering, systems engineering.
For the LiO changeout.
Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to verify that when we take LiO 2 out of the bag and install it, we then put LiO 1 in the stowage location but outside of the bag, and that just the bag goes to Endeavour. Is that correct?
That is all correct.
And again, that was Commander Mike Hopkins getting some clarification on some LiO checkouts. On screen is Thomas Pesquet talking, who is off screen with Aki Hoshide. So Glover, the pilot, as I was mentioning, he holds degrees in general engineering, flight test engineering, systems engineering, and military operational art and science. He has extensive military test flight experience, was a test pilot for the FA-18 Hornet, the Super Hornet, and EA-18G Growler. He has accumulated 3,000 flight hours in more than 40 aircraft, over 400 carrier arrest landing, and 24 combat missions. This was actually his first space flight, and also a fun fact, yesterday was his birthday, so he gets an exciting birthday week, and he gets to spend part of it in space and also the other part back on Earth.
What more could you ask for? Happy belated birthday, Victor Glover. His crew member, mission specialist Shannon Walker, is from Houston, Texas. She was selected as an astronaut by NASA in 2004 and is a doctor of philosophy in space physics. Walker flew on the Russian Soyuz as a flight engineer for Expedition 2425 aboard the International Space Station in space for 163 days. During that mission, she was the robotics operator supporting 3 contingency spacewalks to remove and replace a failed pump module specifically on the space station. Shannon is also one of only a few dozen people to be both an astronaut and an aquanaut, having spent 13 days underwater during NASA's Extreme Environments Mission Operations 15, aptly called NEMO 15. During the mission, she lived inside the world's only research station, Aquarius, which sits at 60 feet beneath the ocean surface and just down the road off the coast of Key Largo.
And last but certainly not least, mission specialist Soichi Noguchi is from Yokohama, Kanagawa, Japan. We saw him donned in his spacesuit and enter the Dragon vehicle just earlier. He was selected as an astronaut by Japan in 1996, has degrees in aeronautical engineering, and is a doctor of philosophy in advanced interdisciplinary studies. Noguchi has logged a total of 177 days in space, having flown on the STS-114 on the Space Shuttle Discovery and on the Russian Soyuz as a member of the Expedition 2223 crew. And while on STS-114, he became the first Japanese astronaut to perform spacewalks on the International Space Station, completing 3 spacewalks totaling 20 hours. He's also one of very few people that have flown on 3 different spacecrafts, the Shuttle, Soyuz, and now Dragon.
Resilience flyout swap out occurred at 10:25.
Copy 10:25, thanks.
Soichi Noguchi, as you mentioned, logging 177 hours on his previous space flight, and this time he comes home. All 4 of these astronauts come home, having added 168 extra days in space.
Dragon SpaceX for LIO time clarification. Hey, we copied 10:25 for that LIO time, but it is currently 10:22. Can you confirm we copied correctly?
Yeah, so my iPad's got a little fast on it, so 10:22 works.
Copy 10:22.
Crew discussing those lithium hydroxide canisters being switched out. So we mentioned they're coming home with 168 days in space, these 4 crew members, and once they splash down, they will be breaking a record from the set by the final Skylab crew of 84 days, 1 hour, and 15 minutes in space by an American crewed spacecraft, and that was in February 1974. So just another first for Crew-1.
The crew is continuing to ingress the Dragon. The next major event coming up as they continue to do checkouts is Dragon hatch closure, followed by the APAS hatch closure on the space station side.
And we heard that Shannon Walker and Soichi Noguchi, we saw they were already in their suits prior to ingressing Crew Dragon. So they were able to get in their seats and plug in those umbilicals, which are part of the suits that allow for communications, data, and air as well to flow into the suit. Mike Hopkins and Victor Glover, you can see inside the capsule, getting our first look of the day inside Crew Dragon Resilience. Victor Glover there at the top of your screen. He and Hopkins will suit up shortly. Looks like they might be getting some final pictures.
So the hands that you see closest to your screen, that is from astronaut Shannon Walker. Again, the mission specialists don their suits before ingressing. Commander Mike Hopkins and pilot Victor Glover will don their suits after hatch closure.
And it looks like they were just doing just that, closing that forward hatch.
So what Mike and Victor are wearing are essentially comfort garments. It's like athletic wear that they will wear underneath their suit. There's actually two hatches. The forward hatch that Leah had mentioned that they are currently working to close. There is also a side hatch that later on after splashdown, that's where they will egress from, and that's the same hatch that they used to ingress when they were launching back in November last year.
And the view on your left from the International Space Station side of the operation. Not only does that Dragon hatch have to be closed, the A-Pass hatch has to be closed as well. Crew member Shane Kimbrough will be...
SpaceX Farm Resilience hatch is closed.
Copy, hatch closed.
And SpaceX from Resilience, you do have a good comm check with suited subjects, so we're going to go ahead and unplug the cabin mic.
Copy, sounds good. And for your awareness, we do plan to do a short nitrox injection following hatch closure to slightly bump cabin pressure.
Resilience copies.
That hatch closure call coming at 3:25 p.m. Pacific time as the International Space Station was flying 269 statute miles over the South Pacific Ocean.
We also heard the call that they have good comms in their suits. Again, as Leah mentioned, there's an umbilical on the right thigh of the suit that will give the suit all the avionics and electronics they need, including the comms. It also provides air and gases. Later on, as you know, the Dragon's capsule re-enters the Earth's atmosphere, it gets exceedingly hot, and so there is nitrox purge through the suit to keep the astronauts nice and cool. And nitrox is essentially a combination of nitrogen and oxygen, very similar to the breathable air that we have here on Earth.
We were talking a little bit about those comfort garments. They serve another purpose as well. If you're familiar with compression socks, it's sort of a similar thing. They're orthostatic garments that these help the crew. They're sort of compression pants and squeeze their legs. That helps force the fluid from their legs up toward the upper part of their body when they come back to gravity. Helps everybody feel a little bit better after spending 6 months in space.
Yeah. And it looks like we do have some satellite handoffs that is to be expected. They're part of the tracking data and relay satellites that are stationed, I believe, in geostationary orbit, 22,000 miles above the Earth's surface. And so we expect them. We should get communications and video back here shortly. That is a view of mission control in Hawthorne, just to my left, as the team here continues to support Dragon departure and docking and eventually splashdown later on tonight.
Yeah, and we should expect to get that communications back in just under 2 minutes now. But as you mentioned, you've got SpaceX Hawthorne there, and we heard from Brandy Dean earlier in Mission Control Houston. The teams are still in joint operations, meaning they're working together, ensuring the safety and the proper execution of everything that happens today. And that'll occur until the vehicle Crew Dragon is outside of the approach ellipsoid. At that point, the International Space Station teams will continue monitoring the International Space Station as they do 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And teams here in Hawthorne will be focused on Crew Dragon itself.
So this Crew-1 team, they launched in November 15th of last year. It took them about 27 hours to get from Earth to the International Space Station and dock and open that hatch. Today is going to be a little different. After we undock. It'll take about 6.5 hours from the International Space Station, to deorbit, re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, and eventually splash down in Panama City, off the coast of Panama City, in Florida. So quite a bit of difference there. The return duration can take anywhere from 6 to upwards of 30+ hours. There's a lot of things that go into, the time of return, the duration of the return, but it's all for the comfort and safety of the astronauts. So yeah, today it's going to be a nice short one for the astronauts. They don't have to wait too long in the resilient space capsule.
Pretty impressive, if you ask me. You can't really drive across the state of Texas in 7 hours, but you can make it from the International Space Station back down to Earth. And some of those factors that we were discussing that play into the length of a return can be, a lot of times we see crew sleep. We want to make sure that the crew are rested and able to monitor the vehicle as it returns. And of course, Crew Dragon is fully autonomous, but we want to just allow them to keep an eye on it and not get too tired as they step through those procedures. So that definitely played in their favor today.
So the next stop is for, now that the Dragon hatch is closed, the commander, Mike Hopkins, and the pilot, Victor Glover, will don their spacesuits. So a little bit more about the suits themselves. They are custom-made one-piece suits. The gloves, the boots, the helmets are all integrated into the suit. So effectively, it's like a onesie. You kind of get in, and everything just zips up. And then the umbilical that I mentioned earlier will pressurize it and give all of the electronics that they need for the suit to be able to communicate from space to ground. The helmet itself is 3D printed nylon, and the outside of it is made up of a few different materials. The gray material is Nomex, which is related to nylon, just a little bit different. It has some additional properties that the astronauts definitely would enjoy. It includes a sort of temperature resistance and radiation resistance and chemical resistance as well. And the white part is Teflon, I believe. But each of the suits are custom made to each of the astronauts. And as we continue to get crew ready to depart the space station, we are now joined by NASA's Commercial Crew Program Manager, Steve Stitch from Houston. Steve, thanks for popping in, and we're hoping you could give us some insight to the steps NASA and SpaceX have taken to get ready for tonight's return.
Okay, hey, thank you very much. It's great to be here. It's pretty exciting to watch the crew getting ready to undock here in just a little bit under 2 hours. We've spent a lot of time over the last week or so getting ready to come home. One of the big factors has been weather and trying to find the right circumstances and situation to bring the crew home. So what we typically do is we start looking at weather. We were originally going to undock and land on Wednesday, and so around Monday we started looking at the trends in the weather and evaluating all the different sites and trying to find the best option to come home. And so, it's taken a little while to find that optimal weather. Really what we're looking for is winds under about 6 to 8 miles per hour in that range. And so we've been looking at the sites over the last few days, and it turns out that the best site over the last 3 days or so has been this Panama City site. And so that's really one of the things we've been doing. I can tell you a little bit more details about the, yeah.
Sorry, so there was a change. Now we're targeting a night landing, which will be another first for Dragon with crew. So how have the teams sort of changed and anticipated in order to make sure that this night landing goes successfully?
Yeah, well, first of all, the vehicle is certified to land in day or night. There's really not an issue with the vehicle itself. And recovery, we have been practicing to recover the crews in day or night. We knew that when you look at kind of how we've set up the program, we have crew rotation missions in April and October, and we pick those months for weather. And so in either of those months, we can have both daylight or night opportunities. And so they've been practicing recently on the last cargo mission. In fact, the CRS-21 mission, which landed in January, that was a night landing, and the SpaceX team recovered that vehicle, and the Crew Dragon and Cargo Dragon are very much identical. So we've been getting ready for this opportunity. And the primary switch was really for the weather. You know, right now the weather forecast for this particular landing is winds on the order of about 3 miles per hour, and the sea states are about 1 foot. So I got some pictures today from the ship and the recovery ship, and the water looks just like glass. And so when we were looking at opportunities, and we debated this switch tonight very carefully, you know, one of the big considerations was the weather was so good and so benign. So we're putting the crew and the vehicle down in very benign winds and very benign waves. And so that's best for the crew and best for the vehicle. And then when we looked at the night opportunity, it's also, it turns out that we'll have quite a bit of moonlight. We'll have a few high clouds, maybe around 22,000 feet, but they'll be very thin. And so we'll have a good moonlight out in that area as well. And then, you know, the ships have lots of lighting and lots of night capability. And so that, you know, the fast boats from the SpaceX Go Navigator ship will go out, and they'll be at the capsule in about 10 minutes after splashdown. So when we weighed all those options, it just looked like this was the best time to come home, the best opportunity. When we looked at the winds for most of the week at these daytime opportunities, the winds were pretty high. And so, you know, after we talked about it for several days, we convinced ourselves, hey, the right thing to do is bring the crew home. In this night opportunity, the vehicle and the recovery team are certified to go do that operation. We talked it over carefully with the SpaceX recovery team, and they're ready to go. And in fact, the ship's out there on position right now, ready for the recovery.
Well, thanks so much for the time, Steve. Do you have any final thoughts before we let you get back to the operations?
No, I would just say we're excited about the return. You know, entry is always a nervous time for me and others at NASA. You know, I'm really excited for the landing. I'm very proud of the teams that worked so hard on this mission for all these months while the crew was on station and preparing for that mission. If you just step back and think about this month of April now heading into May, it's been very busy for commercial crew. We had a port relocate of this vehicle early in the month on April the 5th, a launch not very many days ago now, just a little over a week ago on April the 23rd, and then, you know, now this return and landing for the Crew-1 vehicle and crew. And it's just an exciting time. I can't thank the teams enough for all their hard work at SpaceX, at NASA, across the country. You know, it's a very big team effort, not only between NASA and SpaceX, but the FAA is involved in clearing the airspace for the landing. The Coast Guard's involved in making sure we have notice to mariners and boats out and also patrolling the area. The Federal Communication Commission looking at the reentry and communications. And then finally, the Department of Defense, Detachment 3, in the event of a contingency, they're available to go do a worldwide rescue of the crew. And so we have a great team. We're ready to go, and we're well practiced, and so we're looking forward to landing this morning.
Again, that was Steve Stitch, NASA's Commercial Crew Program Manager, giving us some additional details on the road to Crew-1's departure this evening. It is excellent news that although it is a nighttime splashdown, the sea states are pretty much ideal conditions with very little winds and very small waves. Now that Dragon's hatch is closed, the crew is preparing to depart. We're going to take a short break before we get ready for undocking. Our live coverage will pick up at 5:15 p.m. Pacific time, about 15 minutes before the undocking command is sent and Dragon gets to physically separate from the station.
And you've got a view on the right-hand side of your screen of Crew Dragon still attached to the station, and everyone is now in their suits. Not fully zipped just yet, but everything continues to progress. And once we undock, we'll stay live with you the entire time until Dragon splashes down off the coast of Florida on target for Saturday, May 1st at 11:57 p.m. Pacific time or 6:56 GMT on Sunday. So don't go anywhere. We will see you soon as Crew-1 gets ready to depart the International Space Station.
Installed it not too long ago, so I assume it was done by procedure correctly, but we'll see.